Good evening, everyone. It's 6 p.m., so I'll call to order the regular council meeting for the town of Didsbury for Tuesday, April 28th, 2026. The first order of business on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. I don't think there's any changes to it, so if I could get a motion, Kurt, thank you.
I move that council adopt the agenda as presented.
Thank you. All in favor? Motion is carried. Certainly silence this. All right. Item 3 on the agenda is delegations, presentations, and 3.1 would be Mr. Wayne Poffenroth and Gord Lau. If you'd like to come up and excuse me. Good evening and welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Mayor, members of council, thank you very much for having us tonight to speak on the proposed development of Rose Ridge. And with that, I'll let Wayne introduce himself first.
Yeah, good evening, Wayne Poffenroth. Great to be here today. Can I start?
No.
Anyways, nice to be here. Looking forward to sharing what we have tonight.
Hi, my name is Gordon Lau of Stantec Consulting, and we've been the consultant with Wayne on this project for a number of years. So we'll just go to that next slide. So in terms of the purpose of why we're here tonight, what we wanted to do was to introduce council on a proposed development called Rose Ridge. Really tonight is to seek some direction from council and also to gauge council's interest. With this development also requires the need of a municipal development plan, a policy amendment. And so gauging that interest at this point in time gives us some directions and gives us some understanding as we advance this project forward. What CLT and Wayne wants to do is to create a unique neighborhood, and with that does come some unique considerations, and as I mentioned, requires that MDP amendment in order to advance the project as Wayne and CLT has envisioned it. And so with that, I'll pass it over to Wayne in terms of presenting the vision of what this development is to be.
Thanks, Gordon. I thought I'd start with a little bit of history. Just kind of brings it up to speed of what we're looking at doing. My wife and myself bought this land back in 1997 and then moved to Didsbury and built our first home there. And just to bring a little bit of history, August 31st, 2001, we entered into agreement with the town of Didsbury to bring water and sewer to Valorosa and several other areas in the east part of town, including our land. So in 2001, August of 2001, our water and sewer was paid for on that land. At the present time, our land was still in Mountain View County. In 2004, our subdivision called Rose Ridge Area Structure Plan was in circulation with Mountain View County. We had an open house held jointly with Mountain View County. First reading was approved on that June 16th of 2004. And then in 2006, we were approached by the town of Didsbury. There was an annexation of several different pieces of land. The town of Didsbury met with us and asked if we would like to have ours annexed. And we agreed with the understanding we would still like to carry on with the same type of development that was circulated with Mountain View County, which was kind of large lots, got more of a country feel, and kind of a multi-generational type of home where we could have parents, grandparents, and possibly adult children living in the same home. We think that's going to be I think a very good option in the future. So that's what we had talked with the county, or pardon, with the town of Didsbury. We had a little agreement done up with them, and they seemed to be on board and signed that along with our service agreement. And the area structure plan that was done with the county was pulled back. We pulled it back and then entered into the annexation. So February 4th, 2009 is when our land was annexed. we decided not to do anything for the time being. We've been quite busy in Didsbury. I think we did 7 other different developments throughout those years of your normal 4 units per acre type of developments in the town of Didsbury. And we thought we'd hold off and do ours at a later date. So now is when we think it's a good time to do it. I work a lot in the Calgary area too, and we're finding more and more people are wanting homes, where they can, just with a cost up, where they can share with their family. And so we look at our land, especially on the hill there, and we just see a really good opportunity to do 3/4 to 1 acre lots. There's two homes on the property now. The first one I built, and then the second. And it would be a little less density if we went this way, probably about 2 units per acre. But even with our taxes on the larger homes, last year our taxes were just under $34,000 for 2 homes. So I think if you do the math, because there probably will be larger homes, I don't know if the tax is going to be much less with a lower density, because I think they will be larger homes. So I don't know if that's, I'm hoping that won't be something that would stop us from going ahead, but we would really like to move forward with this plan. We think it's a really good time to do it. We've got a good engineering team behind us and planning. The lower part, we want to do a higher density, looking at doing an age in place, kind of a 55 plus model. And we're doing that in Calgary right now, and it seems to be a real demand for that, and we think that would go over well in Didsbury. So that's kind of a little bit of the history of our land. Like you said, we agreed to pull it out of Mountain View County and work with the town of Didsbury, but we wanted to stick with more or less the same plan, at least up top, and put larger estate homes there. So I think that's basically all I can share for the history of it. I'll maybe turn it over to Gordon or answer questions later if you like.
Thank you. So for many members here, obviously you're aware of the site right at the entrance of 582 there. The plan area itself is about 71 hectares in size, and while that might seem like an extremely large piece of land, a significant amount of that is taken out for the environmental reserve, the Rosebud River, the flood fringe floodway, and then also the unusable slope on the site. So really when you start to look at the details of it, it doesn't seem as big as just kind of the general area itself. It is identified and has always been identified for residential use, so what we're proposing here is consistent. As part of this process, looking at all of the other policy documents, the IDP, this is a logical extension of development for residential use, along with infrastructure and services there on the east or on the west side of the property. I want to tell council that this isn't just an ask and then we'll kind of see what happens. As Wayne alluded to, this project does have a long history. I guess I didn't realize it was that long. But what it does mean is that as part of this process, even to get to our time tonight, is that a tremendous amount of effort and time and cost and money has been spent to make sure that we can answer the questions to council and administration. So in terms of the draft area structure plan itself, I wasn't quite done. In terms of a draft area structure plan, that has been completed, and so that's a document that explains the development as a whole. Many technical studies have already been done, so a transportation impact assessment, stormwater management plans, historical impact assessment has been cleared, and also a biophysical assessment just in regards to the natural state of the Rosebud River and the surrounding areas of that. An open house was actually completed on June 26th last year, just right across the street at the campground there. It wasn't an overly attended event, just in the sense where there's not a lot of neighbors to that area, as we did get a small number, and that has all been also identified and described in the area structure plan itself. Meetings and discussions, and so with this administration and also previous administration, there has been ongoing discussions in terms of that vision of this development, what it's going to be, and how do we get through some of these hurdles related to policies and necessary processes. A servicing review, and Wayne also had alluded to this too, is that part of administration's questions, were how does taxation work on a development that doesn't meet the density? You know, how will that have future impacts? What does operation and maintenance look like? So we provided a high-level assessment of that at the same time. And then lastly, like I mentioned, what all of this stuff represents is that investment in this project. Wayne has spent, again, a tremendous amount of time and effort to bring the necessary information to hopefully get that support, recognizing that there's still a lot of process to go. In terms of the concept plan itself, this is the concept plan. So as I mentioned, and also Wayne alluded to some of the different parts about it. Large part there on the south side is going to be environmental reserve and open space and protection of the river itself. Then there's that kind of 45-degree cut towards the center of it, which is undevelopable slope. On the very east side or west side in the central there, that was the parcel that Wayne had identified in terms of a multifamily site. And so multifamily sites could be a lot of things, but right now the intention is how can it be assisted living? How can it be some of that more affordable product, higher density type items? It could be an apartment, it could be a condo site, it could be just seniors facility. So there's a lot of viable options for that site. The big part that we're talking about here is all those little yellow lots. So all of those represent 3/4 to 1 acre lots. What a concept plan doesn't do a good job of is identifying what does build out look like. We recognize that if it was all just single family, then yeah, density would be even lower than what we're asking for. But what the concept doesn't show us is making sure that this thing encourages secondary suites. How do we allow for garden suites? How do we create housing that supports that vision of multi-generational homes and multifamily homes? And so that's something that, again, the concept just doesn't do a good job of. That's something we need to talk about. That's something we describe in the area structure plan itself. In terms of the numbers and stuff, the big number we want to focus on is that red number right there. Based on the calculations right now, what we identify is there is a potential density of 2.6. We do want to treat that as a minimum. There's probably ways to get that number higher or lower or whatever the case might be. And at the very end of the presentation, ultimately, that is the ask. Currently, the MDP does state that density should or shall be 5 units per net developable, and we're currently sitting at 2.6. And I'll reconfirm that ask at the very end is that, does council have any interest, I guess, in reviewing a plan of this nature, even though it is under the minimum density as per the policy. In terms of service and consideration, I just wanted to touch on this one quickly. While we do want it to be as traditional as a development as possible, we do recognize that the lower density also mean that maybe there could be some changes to design standards. And that's something we will continue flushing out of administration. So number one, it is intended to be piped water and sanitary services. In terms of stormwater, the idea is that we do use a more rural cross-section, so using ditches and overland drainage for stormwater management. Modified roadways, so there on the bottom what we see is, again, a more rural standard with the ditches and the smaller carriageway for the cars themselves. In terms of why all of this matters, it goes to that fiscal consideration. Hopefully we are reducing the type of services a little bit without storm pipes, for example. Hopefully we're generating a higher tax rate through the higher cost homes along with the secondary suites and garden suites and potential home businesses on these lots. Hopefully it attracts positive growth and positive demographics to the community. And then lastly is what do we do to offer that comparable level of service as with any other neighborhood within the town itself. In terms of our ask tonight, or the purpose, ultimately it is to understand council's or potential support of an MDP amendment, or even the interest in a development that is different than normal. What we do want to ensure, whether it's to council, administration, or the public, is that there are still lots of steps in place. Whether it's to continue the approval process of the area structure plan, we know we need to create a new land use zone that would support multi-generational housing, which would then also include public hearings, open houses, and opportunities for the public and council to see this again. We know there's the potential for the MDP amendment itself, which again will have that difficult, that long approval process. There's public hearings, there's rezonings, there's subdivisions, there's development agreements, engineering, construction, and then finally home permits. So there are still lots of steps and processes before we actually get to build out. And I just want to highlight the fact that whatever, the decision we are looking for tonight is just to continue advancing this project to allow us to get to some of these approval steps. But there are still lots of hammers, whether by administration or council, moving forward. So to sum that all up is really the ask itself. In the blue is the current policy within the MDP. So the overall density for residential shall strive to achieve an average of 5 units per net developable acre with an area structure plan or redevelopment area, unless development constraints require considering lower densities. And so what we are asking of council tonight is to provide support or direction to administration to review the MDP, allowing for policies with a lower density in a situation like this, a unique development, a well-planned and thought-out development. Any proposed amendment still needs to be applied for by the developer, being Wayne. So we would have to apply for that MDP amendment, and then it goes through that proper review process, which then, if successful, will end up at council for first reading and so on. And the reason, again, just to summarize the whole discussion of why we're asking for it and why we believe that this development makes sense, is that it meets the majority of policies and directions from the municipality and town. It's respectful of the land and character of Didsbury. It provides a unique housing option, and I think this is important. That's okay. We work in so many communities and so many towns where we want the perfect spread of $300,000 housing and $400,000 and $500,000 housing. It is okay to have a community that doesn't necessarily provide that full spectrum of housing product, right? There are other neighborhoods and other areas that may provide that other part. It provides a development in housing unlike others, so there is very little to compare. I've been very fortunate to work across the entire central Alberta, and in Wayne, talking about his experience with residential development, there is not developments like that out there, so it does bring something very unique to the market. It attracts residents that you otherwise wouldn't be attracting necessarily to the town, right? It is a type of housing product, it's a type of lot product that isn't offered here, and so people wouldn't necessarily be looking in the town unless it was here. It's a local developer. Again, Wayne talks about that history both on this project, other projects in the town, and other projects within the area. So supporting that local developer and having that local developer, especially one that happens to live on the same parcel of land. It's a significant investment. I hope what we talked about tonight already represents a significant investment, but these are small dollars and small efforts compared to the actual development work and when we start to see houses. So the investment tremendously grows as we go through the planning stage and ultimately into that construction stage. Like I mentioned, there's continued opportunities for the engagement, both for administration, council, and the public. And then lastly, we hope that this does protect the town's interest and want for that innovation and want for that attraction to providing a product. Yeah, absolutely. Finish over, Frank.
I was going to add to, I went on the website for the town of Didsbury and all the approved area structure plans. There's 5 of them now that are approved. And they're basically, I think a lot of them are pretty well the standard, 4 to 5 units per acre. So if you take the area structure plans that are approved. This doesn't even include the new annex land. There's the potential for 1,300 to 1,600 lots in all of those 5 different approved area structure plans. And if you take the absorption rate that is an average, of maybe 30 houses per year, which would be great for Didsbury, I mean, we're talking almost 50 years of inventory of all the same product. And that's something that it didn't make sense to go and take our land and do the exact same thing as all these other ones. And so that was something that we took into consideration. Also, I think, it'd be nice to have more businesses come to Didsbury. And I think, having a spot, I'm not putting down any other subdivisions, but I think having a spot where you can have a little bigger home and a little bigger yard, I think could attract maybe some businesses that may come. I know when I tried to get one of my trades out here to move to Didsbury to set up his business, he wasn't real keen, and then I offered my house, and he made the decision pretty quick, to buy my house and move out here, and he's probably got 200 employees now. Several of them are living in Didsbury, so I think I think this could bring not just multi-generational families that can enjoy living together, but also it could bring business to our town. Otherwise, we're going to end up with another subdivision that's the same old, which isn't bad, but I think this could be something that could really be a jewel for the town of Didsbury. And we have done a lot of developments in Didsbury. They said in the past that we've done at least 7, and they're all finished and done, and I think we have happy people. We built several hundred homes here, and we'd like to continue on this and make Didsbury proud, turn it into a nice development. So yeah, again, our ask is a little less density, but some beautiful homes, and I'm trusting that some families can enjoy living together. So that's what I'm looking for. Thank you for hearing us out, and if you have any questions, we'll try to answer the best we can.
Thanks very much, gentlemen. I'll open the floor for questions or comments from the council. Okay.
Thank you for the presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate that. I think I find multi-generational housing really interesting, especially in this area. It's an underutilized system.
Mm-hmm.
I think in Canada in general, it's approached more so in other parts of the world to great effect. I guess my question is, Mr. Lau, you mentioned that red number, the 2.6 as being sort of the important element of it, right? Based primarily on the secondary suites, multi-generational idea of there's more than just more parents and children living in this space. And you mentioned in the presentation encouraging that to be the case. I guess I'd love just as much as you can, some more detail on what that kind of encouragement looks like.
Through the mayor. Yeah, and I think we can do it in different ways. Maybe we'll pull that slide back up. With the first version of the area structure plan that has been submitted, we did identify the potential of maybe 50% of the units having secondary suites. The more that we've been thinking about it and the more that we think about that fiscal impact is the idea of how do we ensure that it happens. So we do believe at this point in time, as part of this process, is that we would have to write a new land use zone for it. So, a multi-generational zone or a large unit zone. And what that zone would enforce is a secondary suite. While we can't guarantee that people build it and people will live in that suite, we can enforce through that land use bylaw that it will be built. And so by building it, obviously adds that level of a product. It adds that taxation basis to that property itself. And again, it ensures that the density is at where it needs to be. Where I think to your earlier comment, something that we really want to touch on too, and Wayne's example is a glowing example of this, is in a traditional house, most times you think of a secondary suite or as a basement suite. It's only in the basement. And by having the larger lots, by having the larger homes, what you start to do is potentially above ground secondary suites, whether it's half or up down splits. And what that really does is start to take away maybe some of that stigma sometimes that comes with the basement suite. The larger lots also allow for the garden suites also, which is not a product that we see a lot of in Central Alberta. It's starting to come up a little bit, but it's still rare, right? That completely separate self-contained unit within the lot. And same thing, the way that we can continue to manage the regulations of that and how it's to be zoned in the future is by creating a land use district that recognizes that can be happen, what are the regulations that is required, and so that a buyer, a home builder is obviously aware of what they can and cannot do on that property.
I was just going to add to, I don't think it would be hard to put that into our documentation. We have a home in Canmore. When we built there, we were required by the town to have a suite. Canmore has issues, as you're probably aware of, where it's getting harder and harder to have a home there with affordability. So that's something that they required when we built our home, is to have a suite, which we were going to do anyways. But so I think it's going to become more and more common. And I think your comment is right. There's probably 80% of the population around the world that actually lives together. It's a wonderful way to live families, if you can get along with your family. But I think it's going to happen more and more. And I think I think this would work very well. The house that we have now, I mean, it looks pretty big, but it's actually 3 houses. There's 3 residents when we built our house. We went to the town and asked for that approval, and they gave us. So we have three separate kitchens and entrances and everything. It's great. It's just a great way to live. So I think it can be done quite easily.
I just, there's a lot of things I like about this, and I'm glad to see the development of this property coming closer to fruition.
Mm-hmm.
Just so we're talking about something there on that red 2.6, how do you get that number? Is that 311 divided by 86.33?
So the way that number comes about is that when we start to add up all those individual lots in there, being 83, we make the assumption for this version that, let's say, half of them had secondary suites, and then we do a density calculation for that multifamily site. We see a total of 311 potential units, and then we divided that by the net developable area of the site. So the entire red boundary minus all of the environmental reserve, minus the river, minus undevelopable areas, and that's how that density number comes to be.
And is that area 86.33?
Yep.
So I get 3.6 when you divide that.
Putting me on the spot. We'll have to go back to that, but yeah, we've looked at this number numerous times, but I think the most important question on the table is that it is going to be below that 5.
Right, I'm just saying, if it was 3.6, it's closer to the 5.
I'll double check it, but I know we've reviewed that number quite a few times.
And to illustration, through the chair, the MVP states under 6.1.1, subject to council's approval, minor variations from the policies of the MDP shall not require an amendment to the MDP, and more substantive changes shall require an amendment to the MDP and any other affected plans. Is this a substantive change or a minor variation? And I'm thinking more of, does that substantive plan or substantive changes refer to many changes in the MDP, or many changes or a substantial amount of change in one point? So just a question of that. And I've got lots of other stuff I'd want to talk about, but those are the 2 key ones, and I don't know how long we're going to spend talking about these.
I'm just going to reference back to that first question first. The reason that it is 2.6 is because it's net developable. The 86 acres only represents the residential developed area. So if you take the yellows plus the orange, But net developable is also considered to be the municipal reserve, roadways, storm ponds. So on call out number 2 there on the bottom, it's actually going to be 311 potential units divided by the 121.97 acres. On the bottom of ours, I'm sorry, there's an area structure plan this council hasn't seen yet, but yeah.
So 311 divided by
121.97 acres, which will give us the 2.57.
Anything else? We'll have, I think, other opportunities to discuss some of the other stuff you might have, Norm, once we get some more information. I think this is something that we can definitely take a look at. There'd obviously be a lot more information the council would require to how big are the homes going to be, what is the square, so we can assess the tax implications. What is that going to look like? But I think there's a way that this can be done. We just have to look at more information to be able to make a decision. So I think having something like this in town would be great. I've seen lots of multi-generational families and homes, and it's a good way, especially with the way the economy is going, the world is going these days, for young people to still be able to have a home. It's a place for them to start and keep families together and keep seniors living with their younger families. So it's something I definitely see value in. So excuse my hoarse voice a little bit. Sorry. If there's nothing further, I'll thank you, gentlemen, for coming tonight and sharing this information. And we'll ask the meeting to get some information to the administration team that would help us sort of make a decision on this.
Yeah, sounds good.
Thank
Excellent.
you.
Thanks very much. All right, that takes us to item 3.2 on the agenda, which is another delegation from Melody Knudsen. Welcome, and come on up and join us.
Have to learn technology here. So to Mayor and all the councillors, thank you very much for having me as a delegation again, because this gives me the opportunity to speak ahead of the meeting. So I'll go right into my letter where I'm recommending 2 policy bylaws being reviewed, and I'm hoping that they will be amended by council to accommodate all the members of the public. I would like to see a change in council procedures so that there is more community input. I think the public has a right to come forward with their concerns before any decisions are made. First, I'd like to request that the council procedural bylaw, 2024-11 be pulled for review. I'm asking for an amendment to be made to move the open public participation period to the beginning of the meeting instead of at the end of the council meetings as it is now. I would recommend probably 30 minutes assigned before each council meeting. Then council will still have time for their delegations to present. Secondly, I feel there should be a review of the public participation policy or bylaw that would allow people to speak prior to every third reading of a bylaw. When I was here last, there was where it was open to the public when it was a land bylaw, but then when there is the other bylaw addressed, there was no opportunity to speak ahead of time. So anyway, therefore, there's no reason to deny a public hearing. Oh, am I in the right place? Yes. Sorry. No reason to deny a public hearing engagement before the third reading of every bylaw. Finally, I request that council direct town staff to schedule any public meetings with council involved at town-owned facilities, the train station, the library, council chambers, which could be well used, or the multipurpose room, which would be a neutral space for all voices to be heard. I feel that's very important so that you can have anyone come forward. Changes to the procedural bylaw and the public participation policy are an easy change. It will allow people to speak freely and openly to council before final decisions are made. At the forums before the election, there were many council candidates saying they wanted more community input. There was a mention of representing all. We need an open, listening council that then considers what people have said ahead of time before decisions are made. So I would really like to see that happen. I would like to ask to hear back from council when there's going to be any action taken on my suggestions, please.
Okay. It's something that we can look at. I mean, the NGA specifically lays out what bylaws require public hearings. And right now, I believe it stipulates that it's open for land use bylaws, but I stand correction.
There's a few different areas.
Okay. Kurt, sorry, that's it.
Hi, welcome, Melody. I got to speak to you at, it was an engagement, and I think it was at,
It was at a private restaurant.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So I read your email more than once, and excuse me, I'm going to refer to my notes because I don't want to miss anything here. But first of all, I'd like to thank you for bringing these ideas forward. I support the idea of moving the question period to the beginning of the meeting. That was something that I brought up at the forum that was held at the multi-purpose room during the election. I think that is where, like you said, a person can speak to something before a decision is made. So I definitely agree with that. However, at the same time, council meetings exist to conduct the business of the municipality, and that work needs to remain focused and efficient. And for that reason, I would support a structured approach, specifically a defined question period, 15 minutes or 30 minutes, as that's to be decided. This strikes a reasonable balance. It ensures the council hears from the public in a timely way, while also protecting the meeting from becoming unfocused or overly extended. It also maintains fairness so that participation is meaningful but not dominated by a small number of voices. I also think that it's very important, though, to recognize that question period is not a substitute for formal public hearings or other legislative process. In particular, third reading is not designed to function as an open forum for debate. That could lead to a whole bunch of procedural challenges. Third reading is intended to confirm or finalize the decision, not restart deliberation. And by having a question period about the item or the bylaw at third reading is reopening deliberation, and that's where you run into problems. And councils can get into a loop. They can't make a decision because they're really not supposed to at that point. In fairness, they haven't shared the same amount of time if new information is brought forward. So the issue isn't about the public input itself. It's that there's already a legally defined place for it. So expanding third reading into an informal hearing stage can undermine those safeguards. And that's what I want to protect against. I want to hear from the public, but I don't want to jeopardize the procedural and legislative nuances that go with that. So third reading is actually supposed to answer one question. Are we passing this or not? All of the debate and deliberation should be coming before the third reading. So I'm not against the debate, like I said. There's just a different place for it in the second reading and the first reading, and that's typically where we would see that. So I wouldn't support opening third reading for reintroducing debate, because that takes us right back to the beginning again. You may have to start rescheduling and giving notice, and it can just create a loop that you can't get out of. So I think we need to leave the third reading the way it is, but definitely have people come and talk before first and second readings are decided on. So again, I really want to thank you. A lot of thought went into this, and I appreciate what you've done here. Thanks.
Thank you. Can I respond to that? I guess I'm thinking then that there shouldn't possibly, for some subjects, there shouldn't be a first and second reading at the same meeting. It should be where there's a first reading and then it's tabled. Well, I don't know what it's called, to be honest, but in my mind you would be tabling it until people had an opportunity to research it and to come forward with their questions and concerns. Then it would go to second reading. I'm not sure what that looks like exactly because I'm not trained as a counselor by any means, but I just feel that people need more voice in our community.
And I don't disagree with you. I think that we need to hear the voice, just at the right time. So if that is something, I haven't looked at that, the reality of that, there are certain things that you do all 3 readings one night. But public hearings are different than just passing a bylaw. Public hearings have an MGA protocol that you must follow, as really does a 3rd reading on just a bylaw. So I'm not trying to argue with you. I'm just trying to caution you of by allowing that to occur at the 3rd reading. The 2nd reading, I don't think that would be an issue. But in the 3rd reading, it can become a very contentious issue. So your idea needs to be spoken about, like discussed, definitely. And I'm not against you. Don't take it that way. I'm just trying to follow the procedural guidelines that we have.
Right.
Yeah, so, sorry, go ahead, Bob. I'm sorry. Okay. Well, thank you for this. I appreciate it, all the thought that went into it and how you framed it, because I think you attempted to frame it in a way that it wasn't just about the one bylaw that we were talking about. It was about all bylaws and public engagement, so I appreciate that. To Councillor Ingham's point, I wonder if the public portion of the meeting was at the beginning, would that have rectified some of what we're conversing about?
Well, I feel it would. When I lived in a community previous to Didsbury, we had that opportunity. We had the opportunity to come and present ideas, come and ask questions. If it was something that was a little more long-winded, then we would contact the town office and we would say that we would like to present. But it wasn't a delegation. It wasn't something where it was very limited. It was where people had freedom of speech and they had rights. And I just feel that unless we change that from the end of the meeting to the beginning, that that's a problem here.
So one other question I have for you is, if we did move the public engagement time to the beginning of the meeting, and you stated 30 minutes, what if we come to that time and we need to close it, and not all public is at the opportunity because someone maybe is taking longer time than we need to? Like, do we put a time period on this, like a 2 minutes, or something like that? Do you get where I'm going with that?
I do get what you're saying, yes. I found that when I lived in the other community, it wasn't really a problem most times because there'd only be 2 or 3 things that came up per meeting. And so, yes, I think you do have to have a time limit, but maybe, I'm not sure, I guess I'm thinking I'm probably taking a little longer tonight than I had planned. So, yes, I think there needs to be a time limit, and maybe then the continuation of those conversations would still be at the end of the meeting if that was an issue, if there was major issues that were being brought up. If they didn't get time then, they could sit through the council meeting and then address it at the end, possibly. I'm just talking off the cuff here.
Hi, thanks. Melanie for coming in. I talked to a few people too during the engagement, and this came up from other people as well. I agree with it being at the beginning, because people are busy. They have to take their time out to come here and then possibly sit through a whole meeting that doesn't have anything to do with maybe what their concerns are in the community, and for them to be able to at least come address the council and then leave if they people have lives, right? And it's a lot to take out an evening to sit through a whole council meeting to then address your thing at the end. So I do agree with moving this to the beginning and then deciding what kind of time limit would need to be set for this.
I'll say a couple things. Not because I'm opposed to this at all. I think there's a time and a place for it, but we have to watch one that Kurt brought up, which is sort of eroding the safeguards that we have in place to make sure that we don't even let councillors repeat the same thing over and over again. If we're debating one issue, a councillor can speak twice to an issue, and then if there's no more new information to introduce, they're not allowed to speak anymore. They can't just keep grandstanding thing that they said in the last question period over and over again, we'll stop them from speaking because it's not productive. So we want to avoid that, but we also want to make sure that we engage people. So I see both sides of things. I do. It's just this council was elected to make decisions for the community. That faith was put in us by the people that elected us to these places. And so we also have to make sure that we're not eroding that institution as well by feeling like we have to consult with the entire community about every decision we make. So there's a fine line there, I think, to be walked. I don't know. I think we'd have to debate this further.
Yeah, I agree that it's got to be a council decision. One of us can't make that. That's a group discussion, obviously. I would just like to add in that I favor it being at the beginning because that's when people can be heard. At the end, they're heard, but the decision's already made, and it sometimes takes away that value of being able to even if it's you're allowed 2 minutes. I'm not trying to get into the length of time, but when someone has something to say, I think that they should be afforded the opportunity to say it prior to us coming to a conclusion. It may change our decision, it may not, but I think that that's part of the hearing process, is that we get to hear the concern before we make a decision, but we still need to make a decision, whatever that is. So that's, I don't know if that's what you're feeling, is that coming at the end maybe takes away that feeling of being heard because it's already done. And this just gives the opportunity before that point in time. Thank you.
Yeah, may I answer to that? I agree with that. I feel that if there's already been bylaws passed and no one had that opportunity to speak, I think it devalues the whole process.
Not to prolong it, just 2 quick points. Titchbury's council a dozen years ago or so already had a before and after time, and I've got some concerns that I would want to address when it's brought up for discussion. I think there's enough interest to direct administration to bring forward a bylaw and talk about it. Pardon?
About moving the time.
All about the things
Yeah.
that she's talked about, or maybe other things in the procedural bylaw that I've noticed that might be for us to take another look at. But there's also, just to remember, there's also 2 key ways that individuals in the community can participate, and that's by bringing an individual counselor's attention to it through their contact email, and also for a email to all our counselors through relations@dewsbury.ca. And so that's something that is available, because when you see the agenda out, I think it's by Monday, you've got a day or a day and a half or something like that to be able to do it. I know it's a short time, but I would just bring those 2, and I would support going to review.
I mean, let's be honest, we could bring a bylaw forward next council meeting, and it could pass in a single sitting, right? Like it could, if we were all aligned on the bylaw, it could go reading 1, 2, 3 all in one night, because the only thing that requires a clause is land use bylaw change, correct? With some exceptions.
With some exceptions, but they're all identified in the Municipal Government Act, where we are required to hold public hearings after first reading.
Right.
An example that you're speaking about, Mr. Mayor, would be tonight, our mill rate bylaw. We don't recommend fanning that out for input, because you'll always get the same answer. I want lower taxes, but that does not support the budget you have approved. Therefore, we must pass that one when you approve your budget, so that we now have the legislative authority to go and collect that money from the public, right? That's kind of one of the ones where we would say, please don't open that up and extend the process. We have statutory timelines. We've got to get them tax notices sent out in May, tax deadlines June 30th, under our current one, et cetera, et cetera. So there's some where it wouldn't be appropriate. I've seen it done where if council's instinct is saying, you know, this might be a politically charged issue, perhaps when we do first reading, even though it's not a requirement under the MGA, we could just put a draft up for 30 days on our website. and just allow people to make comments that way as well. And you can consider that part of the feedback, as well as the discovery period of question period in a meeting. It's just another in-between. What I'm hearing from council is a desire to have a discussion on some of the aspects that Melody's
Let's review what we've done.
Would you rather? Yeah, we can take that direction back and work it in.
Okay, thank you. Sounds good. Thank you very much. Appreciate your input.
May I ask one more thing? Can I present something that's totally not to do with my letter? And I think it's like what it would look like at the beginning of a meeting if I approached town and said, may I please come and share information? It's a positive thing.
Up to the discretion of council.
No, I think when we address this first.
Sorry.
So it's why we address this first and then move on to this.
Oh, okay, second. Okay. Any other opinions? No? I think maybe not tonight. Let us review this. We can always welcome you back to present that another time, if that's okay.
That would be great. Yes, I would appreciate that actually.
Perfect. Thank you very much. We appreciate you coming in tonight.
Thank you very much for your time.
Yes. Can I get a motion?
Yes, I have a motion to direct administration to bring forward council procedural bylaw 2024-11 for review to consider the request made by the delegate.
All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate it. All right, that takes us to item 4.1 on the agenda, which is the April 14th, 2025 regular council meeting minutes and the adoption thereof. Is there any questions, comments? Sorry?
No.
Oh,
So she's going to make a motion.
you had a very puzzled look on your face. I thought maybe I read something wrong. Sorry.
Yeah,
Fair enough, fair enough. Norm, anything in the minutes? No? Okay, yeah, if I could just get a motion, Kurt, that'd be great. Thank you.
I move that council adopt the April 14th, 2026 regular council meeting minutes as presented.
Excellent. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. All right, that takes us to item 5 on the agenda, which is public hearings. So at this time, I am going to recess the regular meeting and call to order the public hearing to consider several land use amending bylaws at 6:52 p.m. Council will consider bylaw 2026-09, which received first reading on March 24th, 2026, and ask for questions from the gallery following its introduction. At the end of the public hearing, I will ask for one last call for questions from the gallery, including those on Zoom, and council, and on the land use amending bylaw 2026-09 prior to the close of the public hearing. For those participating on Zoom, we ask that you use the raise hand function to indicate your willingness to speak to the bylaw. So I'll open it up for the introduction from administration, please.
Thank you. If we could just go to the page in our agenda package. So this is just the beginning, so next slide, please. So this is just showing you the area. So the hatched area on the upper left-hand corner is the area that we're talking about. So we're just talking about that northern portion of that lot to be redesignated to a new land use district. I'd also like to point out that this property was approved for subdivision on April 8th of 2025 and has been approved. The endorsement documents have been completed and submitted to the surveyor for registration, so it's in the process of being two separate titles at this point. So that's why you're looking at the redesignation of only the northern portion of this lot, just to help clear up why it looks like it does. This redesignation will also provide for a mix of residential and high density and commercial uses within the area. So it's simply going to diversify this community and this area. Next slide, please. So under economic development, like placemaking is a deliberate planning, design, and management of public spaces to create a vibrant, inclusive, and economically productive environment. So we feel that that's what's happening here. We're providing some diversity and some opportunity to bring a few little different types of developments within the area and supports our growing town. Next slide, please. So it's in the live-work neighborhood, so the redesignation, as I've indicated, shouldn't detract from the unique characters of this area and help support and allow this area to grow with some diversity. Next slide, please. It's also within the Schatz Village Area Structure Plan, and so that area structure plan has a very specific vision, which is on the next slide. The vision is includes that helps shape what happens on the site from the very beginning. This area structure plan has been in place for a number of years, and we've seen some changes and some growth within this area. Next slide, please. So after a review of this proposal and having a look at the community, we had a look at responses, and in fact it was circulated to adjacent landowners, and I did not receive any concerns or objections from any of the adjacent landowners or any of the relevant agencies that it was circulated to. So we don't feel that it should be a negative impact within the area. So administration is supportive of a consideration for this redesignation of this portion of the parcel. That concludes my presentation. If you have any further questions.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I'll ask for questions from council on this then. No? I think we're all kind of up to speed on this, right? Okay, excellent. I'll ask for comments or questions from the gallery or on Zoom for those that are in favor. No one? Okay. The gallery? All right, perfect. Questions and comments from the gallery or from Zoom for those who are in opposition? No? Okay. I'm going to assume that there aren't any additional comments from the council? No? Okay, perfect. Any additional comments from the administration?
Through the chair, no further comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent. Is there anything additional to add, or are there any more comments before we close this public hearing? And then a sorry pardon me to the gallery and the virtual participants. Okay, all right. Hearing none, I declare the public hearing is adjourned, and the regular council meeting shall reconvene at 6:57 p.m. That's supposed to be a motion. Sorry, pardon me. No? Okay. We're reconvened. Yes, I know. Sorry, the horror threw me. I will get used to these public hearings eventually, I promise. Okay. All right, so that takes us on to item 6 on the agenda, which is the CAO report. Open the floor to comments or questions. No? I think I have one. Sorry?
We're speaking to the CAO.
The CAO report, yes.
I have a question.
So do I. Go ahead, Norm.
Yeah, thanks for your report, Mr. CAO. On the local policing, third paragraph, starting with an area of note in regards to policing is that expired lease agreement and no formal extension, signed approval. Just a question, what legal position at this time is to be used by the town in our policing when there's an expired lease agreement and no formal extensions? What's our legal position? Is that something of concern?
I would say it has not had an adverse effect on the delivery of policing services thus far. Under our MPSA, we are required to provide the space, and we are doing so. We had a contract, it was extended a few times. In the absence of a specified term, I would say if somebody was to protest this, the courts would look at it as, what's the current practice, or default to standing practice rather. So we're still abiding by the same terms and conditions, we just haven't updated the timelines on the last extension. It would be nice if we could have that with Canada and get that done, and we have asked for it, we just haven't received a response back on it. Given there are other priorities of the town demanding our attention, we haven't pushed it as hard as we could, knowing that they are safely ensconced in their unit, and they have completed a renovation a couple of years ago, I think. And things are humming along, it's paperwork, it would be nice to have, but it's not stopping us from delivering policing services. How about that?
Thank you.
I had a similar question, so thank you very much, Martin. Appreciate it. Anything further? No? Excellent. If I could ask for a motion on the CEO report then, please.
I'd move to accept the Chief Administration Officer's report for April 28th, 2026 as information.
Excellent, thank you. All in favor? Motion is carried. Okay, that takes us on to item 7, budget 2026, specifically item 7.1, which is the 2026 amended operating budget. I'll open up the floor to questions or comments. Go ahead.
There's always it's good when we get to this point. We've gone through our budgets, we've looked at everything, we've made cuts where we can make cuts, and I didn't even get new shoes for budget day. I think that's a federal thing. Anyway, that's just my comment, is that a lot of work went into this by administration and council. I want to thank everyone for their patience and a lot of reading.
Thank you. Norm, go ahead.
Under the number 1 requisitions, that comment that says in the second sentence, there's been an increase to Alberta Education requisition as well as the DIP requisition, although rather insignificant. The insignificant is only attached to the DIP, am I right?
Correct.
Is this an important time to point out that we reduced the burden of tax on our taxpayers, but it was gobbled up by the education requisition?
I was going to gracefully point that out later when we get to the bylaw.
Okay, I will save that for you.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
I don't have the number locked in my head, but it was substantial.
Yes, agreed. Anything further? No? Okay. Oh, sorry, well, let's see.
All right, just a quick one. Number 4, solid waste compost bins. Just a quick question on the second sentence. No impact to revenues from taxes, as it is expected that solid waste user fee revenues will offset the investment. Is that expected just within the calendar year or within the tax year? Or is there a timeline, I guess, on that offset?
Thank you for the question. I would expect the revenues within the calendar year would offset the additional cost. As new houses come online, that would account for new revenue, offsetting the cost of this.
Excellent. Anything further? No? All right, well, if I could ask for a motion then, that would be great. Kirk, go ahead.
I move that council grant second reading to the... I'm on the wrong page. I'll tell you what.
To back up a few
I move the
pages.
council approve the 2026 amended operating budget with total revenues before taxes of $7,911,195 and total expenditures of $13,320,077 and with revenue for taxes required of $5,408,882. Not my land use bylaw.
Thank you, Kurt. All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you. All right, that takes us to item 7.2, which is the 2026 amended capital budget. And I'll open the floor again to questions or comments before we go to a motion. Nothing. Go ahead. Not unexpected.
No, I just want to point out to council, if you recall, we had the Didsbury Golf Club at the last meeting asking about some support with that sewer issue. And we have elected to fund that from your strategic initiative reserve to keep it clean.
Understood.
And we hope to beat that price, but that will take us from soup to nuts with an engineered design and the proper specs for pumps, tanks, and everything like that to make sure that when it ties into the town system,
Yep.
that it is built properly, since it's just in our best interest to help them have a well-built facility.
I don't want to get too far into the weeds on this, on the system, but just going through what was written here, I'm assuming that there's a downhill area where there needs to be a tank, and then it's going to have to be pumped back up to street, just seeing that there's some sort of pressurized line and everything else.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So the intention is to sort of grab it at the septic tank system and then convey it from there. During the design, we'll probably investigate if there's a place to grab it from a gravity perspective, like maybe closer to the building, like totally bypass the septic system, and then the price would come in lower. But this is kind of like our worst case scenario of having to put in pumps and controls and reporting so that we can understand when it's overflowing and things like that. So yeah, so the town would sort of take ownership of it, but if we can grab it earlier and just go gravity, we'll go that route for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's right. As this is kind of going to be a going interest in town, it's best that we just do this the right way, the first time, right? So, great. Norm, go ahead.
If I can word it just a little differently rather than just repeating you.
Okay.
Thanks for not pushing us down the road ahead for years and doing it right.
Troy, did you have something? I thought I saw your hand up. Okay. Oh, well,
Just a real quick question on that, because and it's possible I absolutely missed this in reading it. Which reserve account did the sanitary sewer connection come from?
You mean any existing one? I don't think there's no sanitary sewer tie into the town. But the reason we're not proposing to use the wastewater strategic reserve or the wastewater restricted surplus is because that's funded by user fees, and it is for construction of infrastructure within the public utility right away. Because this project is actually council doing work on a piece of land they own that arguably you could sell. It would be open to challenge from the public if we were to use fees from a restricted account for that purpose. And so you have a strategic initiative reserve. I would say that's more what you would want to consider for council's one-off projects like this one, because it kind of came to us here late in the first quarter that this is the cleanest way to get the project done, to not adversely affect their season, and to use money that has fewer restrictions placed upon it than the wastewater reserve. We can't use that reserve. Believe me, I had that conversation with finance, and she has convinced me soundly that is not the way we want to go.
doesn't sound like our CFO.
Definitively. I've been educated, gentlemen.
And would it be fair to say that doing this would probably increase the future value of this property, as opposed to tying it into proper sewer, as opposed to having a septic field?
Yeah.
So, doesn't sound like a bad idea then. Okay, anything further from council?
It's already sort of been asked, but just to have proper clarification. So this system, regardless of how that land is used in future generations with different councils over many years, this is future-proofing the septic system or sewer system for that parcel of land. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Absolutely, I would love one.
So I move to adopt the amended 2026 capital budget as presented, totaling an estimated amount of $1,415,000 and funded from the following sources: operations $72,108, reserves $665,074, provincial grants $525,000, and other grants $152,818.
Thank you. All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Okay, that takes us to item number 8, bylaws and policies, and item number 8.1, which is the land use amending bylaw 2026-09.
You want me to carry on?
Yeah, did you want to pick up where you left off?
Oh, at least it makes sense now.
Well, let's
I move that council grant second reading to land use amending bylaw 2026-09 at the right time.
all in favor? Motion is carried.
And I move that council grant third and final reading to land use amending bylaw 2026-09.
All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Okay. That takes us to item 8.2 on the agenda, tax rate bylaw 2026-10. And I'm going to ask everyone to bear with me a little bit while I do a little bit of light reading, because there's some heft to this. So, the 2026 operating budget outlines the requirements for revenues from taxes of $5,408,882. This is a spending decrease compared to 2025 of $37,068, or 0.7%. So we're lowering the ask from the taxpayers in Didsbury by 0.7% this year, in comparison to 2025. And I'll say that that's in a year where costs rose by 10, 12, 15% overall, across the board, and we're actually managing to reduce the burden on the taxpayers by, be it almost 1%, but it's still 1% when things could have gone up significantly. Unfortunately, the education people and the people weren't quite as kind to us. The education property tax is a provincial tax used to help fund the K-12 education system. This tax is collected by the town of Didsbury and therefore appears on your municipal tax bill. However, the money goes to the government of Alberta. The town of Didsbury has no control over the amount of educational property taxes. In 2025, the government of Alberta increased its education property tax by 14.3% in 2026. It will be increased by an additional 15% overall. The impact to individual communities and property owners will vary, obviously, based on the value of your property. The total education property tax requisition for the town of Didsbury for 2026 is $2,351,746 compared to $2,094,437 in 2025, an increase of $257,309. Excuse me. The average residential property in the town of Didsbury is approximately $364,000 compared to $327,000 the year before. Based on current estimates, the owner of an average residential property will see an increase from last year of approximately 12%, or $101. The average non-residential property in the town of Didsbury is approximately $517,000 compared to $495,000 the previous year. Based on current estimates, the owner of an average non-residential property will see an increase from last year of approximately 9%, or $166. And this is all, of course, based on the actual property values that you have in your individuals. And then there's some other factors that get weighed in, but I don't want to overburden everybody by reading every single line in the tax policy. Needless to say, we managed to reduce property taxes at the municipal level, but there are some other factors that we couldn't control that will increase your property taxes slightly over last year, including largely the education amount. I'll open the floor to comments, questions.
Just a question through the chair. On page 59, the comparison, 2025 comparison chart, to me, the average of the NRR split is not 1.9, but it's close to 1.5. Am I right?
I can answer that, Mayor.
Sorry, I'm just doing some quick math in my head.
You're correct. So originally I had Mountain View County in there as well, which brought the average to 1.9. And then when I removed them, as they're not an urban center, I did not correct the average. So the average is based on all of the municipalities, including Mountain View County. But if we're just looking at the urban municipalities in the county, then yes, the average is about 1.5.
And then,
yeah, go ahead.
I would like to know if the average is 1.5 for the urbans, if that tax ratio changes from our 1.3 to the 1.5, how would that affect the residential, non-residential averages compared to the second and third paragraph on page 60? And I'm looking to see whether that would make sense to support that slow increase that's being recommended.
So I haven't done that as a scenario, but typically because our assessment is overall, like our, the total value of assessment in residential versus non-residential, the non-residential part is lower than we would like to see. You want to see like an 80-20 split, and ours is more about like 12% non-residential, and they're 88% residential. So those little changes, increasing that split that you see there, will impact the non-residential properties greater, in a bigger way than, because we have more assessment base of that's residential, that is paying for the majority of the taxes. So those little changes to the non-residential make a bit of a bigger impact than you would expect. But we did see the split change. It was 1.2 the previous year, and it's up to 1.3 in 2025. That's increasing because our residential, non-residential assessment split is improving. So as we get more non-residential property in town, that split will naturally improve as well. And the burden of the taxes will just naturally shift to the non-residential properties. So if you want me to go into that calculation, it's gonna probably hold us up a little bit, but I think for future years, or even when you're strategic planning, it's something to consider.
I was going to point out the same thing, as hopefully we do our jobs and attract more business to town and more commercial to town, that problem will fix itself and will lower the burden on the residential taxpayer naturally with time, provided we can do what we're all here to do. Anything else? No?
Just a brief comment, just to add that I obviously with how it is right now, I understand why it needs to be the way it is. I look forward to, in future years, hopefully seeing that ratio split. I would really like to see that in coming years.
Amanda, did you have something to add?
Yes. If I could just bring your attention to the bylaw itself in the what page is that, Jocelyn? Page 64. So this outlines the tax rates of each kind. You'll notice under the designated industrial property, I just have a small typo where it says non-residential is $758. That is actually, should be $730, which would match the text on page 61. So if we could, for first reading of the bylaw, we would just get you to read it as it's stated, and then for second reading, we would ask that you read it as amended, and we would make that amendment. If you're doing the math across, you'll notice too that doesn't quite add up.
So we're going to amend this at a later time, or sorry, I just want a clarification on
Well,
that.
we are asking for all three readings tonight, so if council's comfortable to go to second reading, we would ask during second reading that the bylaw or the motion reads as amended.
Okay, understood. Excellent. Any further questions, comments? No? Okay. If I could ask for the first motion. Everyone?
I move that council grant the first reading to the 2026 tax rate bylaw 26-10. Yeah, 2026-10.
Okay, excellent. All in favor of the motion? Carried.
I grant that council I move that council grant second reading as amended to the 2026 tax rate bylaw 2026-10.
Excellent. All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried.
want to keep rolling?
Do I amend it? Is it amended again on the third
No.
reading? Oh, okay. I move that council grant unanimous consent and proceed to the third reading of the 2026 tax rate bylaw 2026-10.
Excellent. Thank you. All in favor? Motion is carried.
And I move that council grant third and final reading to the 2026 tax rate bylaw 2026-10.
All in favor? Motion is carried. Excellent.
Thank you, council.
Thank you. All right, that takes us to item 8.3, which is the Municipal Development Plan amending bylaw 2026-11. Everybody have a chance to review this? I think I kind of maybe would just like a little bit of clarification, like what we're changing and how it's going to affect this bylaw.
Thank you through the chair. So when we look at the live work neighborhood, the name in and itself implies living there and working there. And the way it is written now, it doesn't have enough consideration for a residential type of development. So we're amending it to allow residential development to happen in the entire area, not just, specifically not just Shaw's, but all the areas that are within this broader neighborhood policy area. So we're just bringing the policies in alignment with the name of the policy district.
Okay, thank you. Any? No? No? Okay, good. Thank you.
I move that council grant first reading to the Municipal Development Plan amending bylaw 2026-11.
Excellent. Thank you. All in favor? Motion is carried.
And I move the council set Tuesday, May 26, 2026 as the public hearing for Municipal Development Plan amending bylaw 2026-11.
Excellent. All in favor? Motion is also carried. Thank you. Glad I'm not the only one stumbling over my words tonight. All right. That takes us on to item 8.4, which is the Community Grant Program Policy Change, CS 003-26. We've all seen this already and I think reviewed it. Was there any further questions or comments from council before we move on? Will?
So in reviewing this, I was thinking about unintended consequences with this sort of thing. I'm a huge fan of having a rubric for the community grant funding, and I like the system that has been put down here. I guess I was looking into some possibilities, and I guess one of my concerns is with the, where are we here? With the statements that render on the community grant program funding on page 75, where you render applications ineligible if there's Town of Didsbury operational funding grants. I understand the purpose of this is to make sure that there's a broad spectrum of entities that are able to receive the funding. But I guess my concern would be if the ineligibility applied to certain instances could cause more trouble. And I'll use, for example, I'll use the Lions as an example. An entity that provides community service or to our community, which, as if I understand correctly, we provide a small amount to. Oh, not small amount then. Not a small amount too. But whether it be them or another entity, I understand not wanting to have a disproportionate amount of money allocated to certain entities, but I fear that by painting with a broad ineligibility brush, we might run into a problem where there are entities that provide a disproportionate amount of benefit to the community. And by rendering them completely ineligible to apply to it, I fear that it actually undermines the rubric itself, because the rubric is designed to create a system, as I understand it, where people can fill this out, they check all the boxes, it provides a scoring system, and I could certainly see if you receive these fundings for it to provide a negative on that scoring system. But for it to render it entirely ineligible, I fear that it might cause programs that could benefit a tremendous number of people with small amounts of additional funding to just not happen at all. Go ahead, Bill.
I appreciate the concern from Councillor Stevens. I think this would allow the opportunity for those programs to sharpen their pencils and to recognize that perhaps they need to look at what their operating budgets are and whether or not they can continue on with some of those programs. And or maybe they need to look at an alignment to their strategic plans to our community and therefore move monies for inside their own operating budget to be able to have those community-based programs that you're referencing.
And if I could add to that, I don't see it as just sharpening the pencil, because that's part of it, but it's making sure that what we give organizations in the town is clear. So when we get their budgets at the beginning of the budget planning process, we have their entire budget. And not we're getting their budget, and then we're getting another $30,000 in requests from them for this, that, and the other thing through the grants program, right? It gives us more accountability from these organizations, and also, like Bob said, so not to take away from that, but I think it makes things more transparent, the amount of funding that we're giving organizations within the community. If we can ask those organizations that get the majority of their funding from us to come to us once, with one ask, once a year, as opposed to coming to us once and then getting additional money through the grant program. So it kind of, it grays the line a little bit as to what their actual budget is when we allow that, in my opinion.
I think the other thing is too is if we fund them once a year, then they might have to take the initiative to go find money elsewhere instead of just coming back to
point
the
as well.
town with their hand out.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I like this because it's a clear thing and then for new people that have not benefited from town money and also bring value to the town in ways that we don't even know because they haven't even had a chance to, because the same organizations keep getting the money every year plus the money we already give them. This opens up more opportunity and a very clear rubric for them to work off of, and it's fair for everybody. I think this is what we need.
Yeah, I see your point, Will, but the rubric will still apply. It's only applied to people that are actually eligible for a grant.
Yeah, I'll clarify that. Like, I do support the rubric as a whole. I think it's a brilliant system, actually, and I'm a big fan of it. My issue just lies with the ineligibility causing, again, potential unseen consequences or potential issues down the road. Just go with Norm first. He hasn't spoken yet.
Yeah, and the unintended consequences that you speak about are also the unknown consequences that we have right now. And so if we run with this and we find problems with it, hey, we can change it.
Yeah. It's a policy, right? It's not really just
Further to my comment before, I think the opportunity would be for those groups to be able to present their ask beyond the community grant program, as Mayor Little has just spoken to, right? That when they come and they do their presentation of their budget, and they could ask for a certain amount of percentage taken into consideration what they've generally received from the community grant, that would be an opportunity for them again to be able to sharpen their pencils.
Further? Okay. So I'll ask for the first motion on this, please, from Tomlin. Troy? Okay, thank you.
I move to rescind policy CS 003-24- community grant program.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.
And I move to approve policy CS 003-26- community grant program.
Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, that that takes us to item 8.5, CS 004-26, facility discounts policy. This was pretty straightforward. Does anybody have any questions or comments to like that put forward before we get a motion?
I do have a question, actually. This one, just for clarity on the line here for the facility discounts where it lists the amount. Sorry, let me find the page for it.
1683.
I believe so, yeah. Yes, 83. I just want to confirm the rental rates there. Are those the rental rates listed with the discount or listed without the discount?
Without the actual master rates bylaw in front of me, let me get back to you on that one. It's without. Good. Someone who's smarter than me coming through in the clutch.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right. If I could get a motion on this then, please.
I move that council approve policy CS 004-26, facility discounts.
Thank you, Kurt. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, that takes us to business and item 9.1, which is the RFP award for the Didsbury Arena boiler and water storage replacement. I will open up the floor for questions and comments.
I see, through the chair, I see Nicole's not here tonight. I'm just wondering, is this a bigger system than what we had in, or is it equal or less? Or I'm looking at basically gallons per hour of water.
Craig will take it.
Thank you for the question. Although I don't have the exact gallons per hour, I do know the system is split between the two different types of operating systems that we're trying to resolve. One is hot showers, the other was hot water for the Zamboni. They have different demands and different peaks. So what we've done is we've split the system up to ensure that both are adequately served and one's not being starved.
That's kind of what we were running into before, where filling the Zamboni, the showers are both cold.
Yes, sir.
I got you, yeah.
As I understand it, we're going from a 2-boiler system to a 3-boiler system, which will eliminate that problem.
Yeah, that's correct. The proposal in front of you is intended to eliminate cold showers for the boys and girls after hockey games.
That's important. Excellent. Other questions, comments? Okay. Can I get a motion then, please? All right. Yeah, sure. Yeah, go ahead, Will.
I move to award the 2026 Didsbury Arena Boiler plus Water Storage Replacement Project to 2216798 AV Inc., Fusion Plumbing and Heating Alberta, for a total of $105,595.34.
Excellent. Thank you, Will. All in favor? Excellent. Motion is carried. Thank you. That takes us on to item 9.2, which it's the community publication. Everybody had a chance to review this. I think it's something we talked about, I'd say several months ago. I think it's great for it. I have one question personally, but I'll open up the floor to everybody else first. And go ahead, Norm.
Who's TNC Publishing Group?
It's a private entity that had contacted us with the proposal. They do this kind of publication in other municipalities. The reason we brought this one forward to you was the obvious benefit of having a third party do it for us. We're not collecting revenue from ads, but we're also not burdened with creating ads and then trying to collect revenue. This will give us an editorial forum where we can put our material in that you had discussed, things like garbage pickup dates, schedule hours, facility access hours, things like that. And it'll be done and handled entirely by someone else at no cost to us and at no demand on the staff, and it'll still produce a high quality glossy publication. So we thought this was a pretty good win. Private industry stepped in and said, we can provide this for you. And so we thought we'd run it up the flagpole to you guys and see.
I'm assuming that no cost is as a result of the 40% ad revenue? Looks like it's about a 60-40 split, so.
Yeah, the 40%, I'm assuming that's advertising content, yeah. Some places you could get a less quality in the editorial side and you know, run a 70-30 or an 80-20, but in this case, just under half is devoted to ads of the publication space, and then that leaves us still room for some good articles, photos, and of course publishing schedules and such. So I'm looking at it like it's a pretty good deal with my background. I'm thinking that works pretty good for us.
I'm just going to put this out there to play devil's advocate a little bit. Sorry, Bob, you go ahead. Never mind.
No, I was just going to ask you, what is the length of this agreement? Would it be just 1 year or?
Yeah, this is for an annual one, I believe. Wait, you have more, Lisa?
Most do it biannually, but we do it annually too. It's up to us.
Start with a year and see how it goes. Maybe we don't like it, and somehow by the time the finished product is delivered, you want to go a different direction next year. But this is a great way to test out a new idea that you guys had talked about, and do it in a way that doesn't add extra work on staff's plate. I love that, yeah.
Okay. This was something that was brought to us by the community, so I love that we're, you know, giving what was asked of us. So go ahead. Did you have something, Norm?
Just to confirm, in our motion, does it, because the 6 months and 12 months was asked for, should we confirm in our motion that it's for 12 months? Like for 1 year?
And when we say that, that means we're publishing this twice a year or once a year, correct?
How about it, language in the motion be up to 12 months? And that'll cover 1 or 2 editions, and we can finalize that when we have an agreement to sign with the third party, if that's all right.
Okay. Can you handle them? I'll look to you to put that forward then, Mark.
Sure.
Thank you.
On page 85, correct?
Page 85.
I get this right?
Just add 12 months to the end, and then you're good.
Up to approve entering into a publishing agreement with TNC Publishing Group to produce a Town of Didsbury promotional, informational, community publication of up to 12
months. Excellent. Thank you. All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried.
Thank you, Council.
Okay. That takes us to item 10, which is council reports. I have one written report from Deputy Mayor Murray, which was excellent. Thank you very much, Bob. Do you have anything you want to add orally to that?
No, everything in the report is as presented, so thank you for the opportunity.
Okay. Any other oral reports anybody wants to make?
Oh, I just was at the Mountain View Regional Waste Management Commission AGM yesterday, and our regular meeting, so I'll have that report on the next meeting.
That's great, yeah, that's fine. Norm?
I attended the Mountain View Regional Water Services Commission AGM together with the April meeting in Innisfail. Also past members, including our own longtime board member from Didsbury, previous councillor Bill Windsor, were recognized and celebrated with an engraving. And it was a delight to also meet many who came by the town booth at the Didsbury Trade Show. Good conversations and interest in Didsbury, and greetings from those who have recently moved here. And the RDR mug, Red Deer River Municipal Users Group, Spring 2026 newsletter. I've sent this to admin and councillors, and you'll get a copy of that next session. And I attended 2 openings, Castle Putt and Old Crow Antique and Bookshop, as with others, and it was a delight to be there.
Saw the pictures, they look great. Thank you. Anybody else? No? Okay. If I could just get a motion then on this, that would be great. Good, Kurt.
To accept the correspondence for April 28th.
Council reports.
Oh, yes.
You're reading ahead.
I'll do this. I move that council accept the April 28th, 2026 council reports as information.
Thanks, Will. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. That takes us on to correspondence and information, of which we had several pieces. We got Mountain View Regional Water Services Commission response to questions, There was the Mountain View Hospice Society Golf Classic sponsorship request. We'll go back to each, don't worry. The Central Alberta Economic Partnership membership renewal, and then the letter from Lori Adamczyk. So I'll open up the floor to questions or comments around the correspondence.
So if it's okay with council, I would just like to address the letter that Lori sent us. I think a lot of work went into it, and I just had a few things I'd like to say. I think quite often closed sessions are possibly misunderstood, and there's some reasons why, but I just think that with the amount of work that she put into this, I think if council so pleases, I would just do a little response to that. Again, I'm going to refer to my notes because there was a lot to unpack in her email. There was a lot of information, and it was very well written. But so, Lori, I would like to thank you for your thoughtful email and for taking time to review council's meeting practices and bring forward your perspectives on transparency and accountability. I appreciate the intent behind these recommendations and strongly agree that openness and transparency are essential in maintaining public trust. At the same time, I do have some concerns about how a few of these points are framed and the potential for unintended consequences if applied too rigidly. For example, while it's important to ensure closed meetings are used appropriately, some of the items identified as not permitted in closed session, such as budget discussions, bylaws, or capital projects, can in some certain circumstances legitimately include confidential components, i.e. matters like legal advice, contract negotiations, land values, and may require portions of those discussions to occur in camera. We all know how busy we've been in camera. And a more flexible approach that recognizes these nuances would better reflect how council operates within legislation, which we do. Similarly, there are assumptions about specific agenda items that may not fully account for context in which they were discussed. Items that appear straightforward on the surface, such as community event proposals, can involve third-party negotiations and contractual details that justify confidentiality. Without the full context, it can be difficult to determine whether a closed session was appropriate by the public. Trust us, please, it is. With respect to reporting, the concern about items not resulting in a public resolution is understandable. However, not all closed meeting discussions are intended to produce formal motions. Many are for information, guidance, or preliminary direction. That doesn't necessarily indicate a lack of transparency, but rather reflects the different purposes those discussions can serve. Finally, I agree that a clearer agenda descriptions can improve transparency, but there is a balance to strike. Providing too much detail in advance of a closed session can risk disclosing sensitive information and undermine the very reasons those protections exist. Overall, I support the goal of improving clarity and public confidence, but I think it's important that any changes maintain the flexibility needed to protect confidential information and allow council to function effectively within the framework of the Municipal Government Act. I believe council should take time, if they choose to carefully review the matter, consider the legislative framework and ensure that any adjustments that may or may not be made would strengthen governance without creating unintended consequences.
Thank you, Councillor. Well said, and agree with all of what you said, so thank you. Anything additional anybody would like to add?
Yeah, this came up in a lot of the public discussions we had. And I think, yeah, it is a fine line because some of those things that we discuss can be, you have the information that has to be enclosed, and then maybe it's a way that we have to come around. How can we discuss these things in open and then take the closed parts to the closed to then offer more transparency to the public?
I think the other thing that we all know as councillors here is we've discussed a lot of bylaws and that sort of stuff and policies, which with the previous council all went to committee. When it goes to committee, then it's all enclosed there too. It's just, there's a different look to it when we're going into closed to discuss policies and bylaws, whereas before they would just send it to committee and it would go to committee and it would be all enclosed there. We've spent a lot of time on that stuff too, I think.
You know, I agree, Rowan. We've had a lot of policies that we've reviewed. We've had a lot of bylaws, land use bylaws, et cetera, that we've had to review. You know, I rely on the CAO and his assistant to make sure that anything that we have to discuss in closed has to be discussed in closed. That, you know, it's a legislative requirement because there's protected information in there, or because it's, you know, like Kurt discussed, a contractual negotiation, or there's a lot of things that, you know, people may not understand that we're discussing in closed, that, you know, it's done for good reason. I do think there's some opportunity for us to maybe slightly improve how we note them on the agenda without disclosing confidential information that we can't. Maybe include a little bit more context in the description. Michael and I, the CAO and I have discussed that, but that's, you know, probably an opportunity that's been raised. And then also linking any, you know, not that there are a lot of motions that come out of closed sessions, but there are occasionally one or two that we make sure that we link those motions to the item on the agenda so that it's very clear what that motion was related to. I think those are a couple opportunities, but I think we're following the legislation we're doing as we're directed by the CEO, and you know, to make sure that we're well within the legal guidelines. So I appreciate the feedback that we got from the community, but it's yeah. Anything else? No? Okay, excellent. Any other comments on any of the other correspondence?
I just want to make a comment with the CAEP, the Central Alberta Economic Partnership. I read through that in detail, and there is lots of busyness in the report. I'm wondering, what are the recent outcomes that have happened because of this partnership? In other words, how effective has it been? And maybe if somebody could address that, I'd appreciate it.
I would just call to your attention that they did note what they did in the last year in their report on page 114, 113, and 112. Some of the key initiatives or readiness profiles that they did for communities. They looked at a connections corridor feasibility study to connect the northern highway corridor so that transportation did not have to come down to Highway 1 and go across. They could go across at Rocky. So that is one of the things that they were working on. There are a bunch of, as Councillor Quantz referenced, there are some other flowery wordings that are in this, but the key is that they have moved themselves to another look and how they are as CAPE, the Team Central Alberta kind of understanding. The key will be for us, and there'll be a few of us council members that go to their AGM, where we have to make a decision because the amount per populace is static at this year, but it will increase over the next 2 years because their government funding is decreasing over the next 2 years. So they're trying to find a way to settle the boat and make sure that they can continue forward. It's my belief that this AGM is probably one of the most crucial AGMs for CAPE and that they've ever had. So I think it's good that we have some councillors going as well as our CAO.
Remind me when that is, Councillor?
May the 8th.
8th, okay. Okay.
Excellent. Any further comments, questions on the correspondence? Okay, could I get a motion for it then, please?
To accept the correspondence for April 28, 2026 as information.
Thank you. All in favor? Motion is carried. Okay, that takes us to item 12 on the agenda, which is question period. Okay, thank you. That That takes us to item 13, which is the closed meeting. If I can get a motion.
I move the council go into close at 7:49.
Thank you, Aaron. All in favor? Motion is carried.
council come out as closed at 8:22:26, 8:25:29.
All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Okay, could I get one more motion, please?
I move that the meeting be adjourned at 8:25.
All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried.
You were much smoother than I was.
You're trying to read the seconds as they were going.
I know. It was confusing.
Doesn't take much, it doesn't take much.
Tonight's evening exceptional for all.
Yeah, we all got to start a little bit.
Yes.